This is USS Constellation, preserved in Baltimore Harbor, Maryland. She is the second ship to carry the proud name. The first Constellation was the 38-gun frigate built about 200 years ago in the Gosport Naval Yards. Then she was scrapped eventually due to old age, and the second ship, the 22-gun sloop of war, was built in the early 1850s. This documentary will show what life was like for the sailors and Marines who served aboard the USS Constellation back during the time when war pitted brother against brother during the period of the Civil War. We will start from the lowest bowels of the ship and work our way towards the highest tops. The berth deck aboard the Constellation served for sleeping, eating, and recreation for the watch not on duty. The enlisted members of the crew were quartered between the sick bay, forward, and the wardroom, or officers' quarters, aft. Suspended from the overhead by a rope that had passed through 12 grommets on each end, the hammock used by Union sailors was 72 inches long and 30 inches wide, and it was ideally suited to minimize the roll effect of the vessel on those trying to sleep. The typical workday aboard a Civil War-era warship like the Constellation usually began at 5 a.m. when the Marine musician sounded reveille. After the hammocks were secured, the crew got out and washed down the decks. Teams under the direction of boatswain's mate hoisted the spar deck. The brass fittings and other bright metals were polished as well. There was always plenty of hard work to be done. The two capstans, one on each end on the spar and gun decks, turned one the same axle. They were used for tasks that required great physical effort, like weighing anchor and lifting boats and spars. When weighing the anchor, a rope, called a messenger, formed a loop around the capstan. Bars were then inserted into the slots on the capstan's head. A detail of sailors would push the bars as they moved around the capstan. As the capstan turned, it would lock into place. Some skills aboard the ship only came with experience. The helm consisted of a wheel at each end of the drum. Upon the drum were wound 5.5 turns of rope, with a staple securing the midpoint to the drum. The Navy employed me with full-time ratings of cook, and on some ships the men received 3 hot meals a day. Cooks prepared the meals on the galley on the forward gun deck. Each sailor was assigned to a mess or a team of men who ate meals together. A typical mess consisted of 8 to 14 men of the same rank and watch. The morning meal typically consisted of 1 pint of coffee, hard tack or ship's biscuit, and a piece of salted junk. In order to curb the incidence of drunkenness aboard a ship, a daily run of 1 pint of rum was issued to sailors of the Constellation, which was diluted with water. Outraged sailors promptly named the watered-down concoction grog, after Admiral Sir Edward Vernon of the Royal Navy, who ordered the watered-down ration. In addition to the sailors, all large ships and naval bases also had Marine detachments. The Marines were usually formed into a single division under their lieutenant on the spar deck. When not training or engaged in battle, Marines provided the officers with a force capable of stopping fights that resulted from the personality clashes that surely arose among large numbers of men confined in a small area. The man who struck the first blow might find himself confined to the brig, in irons, and on a diet of bread and water for 24 hours, as a warning not to persist in such conduct. Despite the rigors of Navy life and discipline, the members of the crew enjoyed a variety of diversions. Sunday afternoons, when in port, were generally reserved for loafing, and there was some time for recreation when the watch and training schedules allowed. During this personal time, sailors and Marines usually wrote letters, read books or newspapers, or just relaxed and dozed. Some passed the time repairing or adding decorative needlework to their clothing, or played games like checkers and dominoes. In battle, a warship's main strength was found in her great guns. Constellation's main battery, located on the gun deck, consisted of 20 cannon mounted on naval 4 truck carriages. This armament gave her a broadside of 10 guns each to port and to starboard. The captains of the guns gave the commands, primed, aimed, and fired the weapons. The sponges swabbed the rubes to extinguish burning embers and rammed home the new cartridges and projectiles. The loaders placed the cartridges and projectiles in the muzzle and assisted the spongers in ramming them home. The shot or shellmen procured the projectiles in wadding and passed them to the loaders. The handspikemen raised the breech of the gun so the quoin could be moved to adjust elevation of the muzzle. The remainder of the men were the train and side tackle men who hauled on the ropes that ran the guns in and out and adjusted direction left and right.
All of us have in our veins the exact same percentage of salt in our blood that exists in the ocean. And therefore, we have salt in our blood, in our sweat, in our tears. We are tied to the ocean. And when we go back to the sea, whether it is to sail or to watch it, we are going back from whence we came.